Everyone. Based on what we said last time, that according to the general Ashkenazi custom, the Chazzan stands not on the Bima in the middle, but rather he stands up front. Why is it that for Kabbalat Shabbat, Friday night, in most shuls, the Chazzan does stand on the Bima? And there's basically three reasons given for it. Number one, in a very important book about Ashkenazic minhagim, known as Noheg Chatzon Yosef. It was written by Rabbi Yosef Yusfa ben Moshe Kushman. He lived in the 18th century. He writes that not everyone accepted this new custom coming out of Tzfat, known as Kabbalat Shabbat. And therefore, he said, that in the places that they did it, Omer HaChazan ala bima umekabel Shabbat, v'achar kach yored HaChazan lifnei hateva umitpalel mincha lechol HaKahal. That he davened Kabbalat Shabbat on the Bima, and then he davened Mincha in the right place. So obviously you see that Kabbalat Shabbat was done before Mincha, and it wasn't part of the services, and therefore he stood on the Bima. In a book called Ziv HaShabbat, a book that by Rabbi Yehuda Dov Zinger, his years 1901 to 1971, beautiful book. And he says basically that there was a big machlokas if we could accept what Rav Moshe Cordova and Rav Shlomo Alkabetz decided that we should have this Kabbalat Shabbat with the Chadodi and everything. And therefore, from this perspective, because there were many that were against it. And in order to prevent a machloket in shul about it, they made what we like to do, a compromise. What was the compromise? In Higu Betor Pshara, Bebetei Knesset Agdolim, that even though the Chazan leads it, he doesn't stand in his normal place, but rather the eight amirat miro means morim elu ad barchu lifnei ativa ela ole ala bima umisham umashmiya et harina ve'et atfila. So every time you see a Chazan on the Bima for Friday night, it's sort of to remember that not everyone accepted this whole idea of saying 6 prakim of Tehillim before Lechadodi, 2 afterwards, Lechadodi in the middle, and therefore, because it's not a formal part of davening, the Chazan stands on the Bima and not in his normal place, which should be up front. The second answer is given by the book called Ta'amei HaMinhagim. This book that I'm holding in my hands, Ta'amei HaMinhagim or Mikorei Hadinim, is a wonderful book explaining a lot of the things that we do in general. The book was written by Rav Abraham Yitzchak Sperling from Lvov, and he comes along and says, once upon a moon, after all, the Gemara says that Rav Chanina would put on his Shabbos clothes and would say Bov and he'd say Likrat Shabbat HaMalka, and from this perspective comes along the Be'er Heitev and says that at the very least we should go out to the courtyard of the shul in order to accept Shabbos, not accept Shabbos in the shul. But what are you going to do? The quorum is the quorum. What are you going to start doing? Moving people around? Okay. Holech al shatz al abima lekabel Shabbos shu makom gavoa v'krova lapetach. So every time you see the Chazan on the Bima for Kabbalat Shabbat, it's to remember that once upon a time we went out to the fields, and therefore he's symbolically going from the front of the shul to the middle of the shul to remember that once upon a time we went out of the shul in order to receive Shabbos. The third answer is given in the book called Ziv HaShabbat that I mentioned earlier. Rav Yehuda Dov Zinger explains, everyone agrees that on Shabbos we received the Torah. That's an open Gemara in Shabbos Daf Pei Vav, that we, from this perspective, how do we remember that we received the Torah on Shabbos? Okay, in Hegel, Shebe'ei Tatchalat Knisat HaShabbat, Yidpalel HaChazan Ala Bima, Hamakom Shekorin Bo B'Torah B'Tzibur. Very simply, the Chazzan goes to the Bima, the place we usually lean from, to remind everyone we received the Torah on Shabbos. And indeed, on Shabbos morning, we say, Ushnei luchot avanim orid biyado. That is not by chance. It was on Shabbos that Moshe received the Torah. So to sum up, why does the Chazzan stand on the Bima even though the general custom was to stand in front? Number one, to remember that once upon a time, not everyone agreed with this Kabbalat Shabbat. So to say, listen, we understand it's not a formal part of davening, we put him on the Bima. Number two, to remember that once upon a time we left shul, so he goes closer to the actual exit to the shul, which is the Bima, which is closer than the front of the shul. And number three, to remember that on Shabbos we received the Torah, and therefore we mekabel Shabbos on the very place that we laid the Torah.
Skavalu, tittiri dai lai ra de ram ba, hai lai la, tittiri dai.